All right, today we're going to be talking about the best response to being dumped by text. And, most of the time when people write articles or they film videos, they're going to give you like this step-by-step outline of what to say. And I'm definitely going to do that, but I'm actually going to encourage you here to look a bit more long-term in how you're handling this breakup. All right, so first things first, let's talk about how to respond to being dumped by text. And really, I put together a simple 4-step method for how to handle this type of a situation. So the 4 steps are as follows. Number 1 is understand why exes nowadays prefer to break up over text. Number 2, the journey from anxious to secure should be your ultimate goal. Number 3, there's actually a 1-word text that you should always use in response to a breakup. And number 4, adopting the correct breakup revenge mentality. So let's just dump in and get to the good stuff here. All right, so why do exes prefer to break up over text? Now, we've done research over the past couple of years with our clients and specifically trying to understand what their attachment styles are and what their exes' attachment styles are. We find that most of our clients tend to have anxious attachment styles while most of their exes tend to have avoidant attachment styles. And if you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense for why an ex who prefers to break over text is kind of in the avoidant wheelhouse. So what is an avoidant? Well, the first way I would define someone who has an avoidant attachment style is that they're usually someone who's really protective of their independence, so much so that they actually push their partners away when they feel that their independence is being threatened. And this can actually evolve into them being afraid of letting anyone getting too close. So they'll often have their walls up. Sometimes you'll be with them. Things will seem like they're going great. And then you get this gut and you're feeling that something's wrong. Maybe you pick up a cue in their body language, or maybe they're just not interested in you or in sharing or opening up to you. And you kind of feel like they're holding back. And they live this kind of difficult paradox where they constantly want to let someone in, but they're too afraid of letting someone in. And so they often sort of go hot and cold. And one of the common symptoms from avoidance is that they tend to avoid problems or conversations that require a lot of emotional intimacies. So when you experience a breakup with an avoidant, usually it's going to manifest itself in 2 ways. Number 1, they're going to break up with you by slowly ghosting you, slowly phasing you out of the picture. Or number 2, they're going to simply break up with you through text. And the commonality between the 2 approaches is essentially they don't have to be in front of you physically, and they can remain in complete control of when the conversation starts and stops. And texting is sort of like this low value way of having a breakup conversation. They get to avoid the potential outburst you're going to have. They get to avoid the emotions that go into it. They know they're about to hurt your feelings. They maybe even feel sorry for the fact that they're about to hurt your feelings, but they do it because it makes them feel safer and sort of they don't have to run the risk of letting you emotionally close to why they're breaking up with you. And so it makes a lot of sense for why a lot of the exes that we're studying end up preferring to break up over text. Now, the ultimate reason that you're watching this video is because you're trying to understand, how do you respond to this breakup text? Well, before we get to that, I feel like it's important for you to grasp the concept of the essence of your mentality when you receive these text messages, right? I'm really confident that I'm one of the few human beings, and I used to feel arrogant kind of making these claims, but I don't so much anymore because I've just seen so many breakups. But I feel like I'm one of the very few people on earth that has witnessed almost every type of breakup that you can imagine. So I've been doing this for close to 10 years now, and I've toiled away on our website, podcast, and YouTube channel consistently at least 5 days a week for those 10 years, hours and hours and hours, trying to understand the delicate intricacies that go along with breakups. And here's kind of the typical pattern that I've noticed with our clients when they get broken up with their exes through text, right? So their ex will break up with them through text. Then our clients get super angry and demand to see them in person because why would you do this to me? We've shared so much. Their ex, of course, declines or simply says nothing. And then our clients then get even more upset and try to fix the problem in some way, which is really in line with anxious type of mentality. And things will just continue to escalate from there. And this is oftentimes when we get people coming to our website telling us that they've begged for their ex back, or they've showed up their ex's work unannounced. They've tried to buy their ex's gifts. They've tried to fix the problem in every way, shape, or form. It usually starts with the simple fact that they want some closure. And there's a couple of things that are problematic with this approach. I think the first thing is there's this really cool quote from one of my favorite TV shows called Peaky Blinders, and it's, "You don't parlay when you're on the back foot." And I really love that quote because really the best approach to getting your ex to almost feel nostalgia or regret is to approach them or talk to them again when you actually have some type of leverage, when you have something that they want. And in this case, it's you. So you have to become someone high value enough that they want you back. And immediately after a breakup is the one point in time where you absolutely do not have that leverage. Now, we're going to talk about how to get that leverage in a moment, but let's kind of move on to the second reason that I really don't like the natural approach that people take. And the second reason is most of the time when you're trying to quote unquote gain closure from your ex, that's actually your anxious side talking. So let's take a deeper look at sort of that list of things I mentioned that kind of unfolds with most of our clients. So their ex breaks up with them through text. Our clients get super angry and demand to see them in person. This is an anxious type of an action. Their ex declines and says nothing. Then our clients then get even more upset and they try to fix the problem in some way, which is definitely an anxious trait. Now, every needy action that our clients often take is driven by some anxious insecurity revolving around this internal need not to be alone, which is perfectly understandable. But this is the wrong way to approach a breakup, especially if you've been dumped. Your end goal should always remain the same. Ask yourself, what would a securely attached person do? And the truth is, a securely attached person will allow themselves to feel heartbreak, but they don't allow the breakup to actually break them. Rather, they use the breakup as an experience in which they can evolve and learn from. So rather than giving in to your anxious tendencies, I want you to take a moment and recognize them for what they are, and then start the long, arduous process of turning those anxious qualities into secure qualities. But probably the best way to do that is figuring out exactly how you respond to being dumped. And that's where step 3 kind of comes into place. So step 1, which was all about helping you understand why exes prefer to break up over text. Step 2, which is essentially adopting this idea that, okay, I'm going to go from the journey of being an anxious person to a more secure person throughout this breakup. And number 3 is using this simple one-word text in response to a breakup text. So your ex just sent you some super long breakup text, and usually what I do, I actually wrote an article in tandem with this video, which is kind of cool. And what I did in the article is I took a real life breakup text from our private Facebook support group. And basically the breakup text went something like this. It was like, "I've done a lot of thinking last night and this morning. I think you're right to say that I'm not 100% over my last ex, but I'm in this sort of difficult position where I'm still physically attracted to you and really am attracted to your kindness and your emotional intimacies, but there's something broken in me and I need to fix it before I can be in the relationship." And the truth is, it was actually one of the nicer breakup texts that I've ever come across. But usually the prevailing thought is when you get a breakup text, your ex will almost always try to paint themselves as the good guy, even if they're not being the good guy, because everyone needs to be the hero of their own story, myself included. So oftentimes it's usually some very long variation of "it's not you, it's me." Sometimes the breakup text will not be nice like this. Sometimes it will be very volatile, but usually that's a response to how you're interacting or acting around the breakup or the precipice of the breakup. So how should you respond to this type of a thing? Well, my dad always has this saying, and it always used to get on my nerves when I was younger because it was always just something, I don't know, it was just something that would get on my nerves. But now that I'm older, I kind of recognize the value in it that only experience and wisdom can bring. And so here's what he told me. He always told me that there's brilliance and brevity. And I think the advice is relevant here. So rather than responding, asking a bunch of questions about the breakup and trying to fix things, I want you to respond with one simple word. "Okay, that's fine. All right." And there's a couple of reasons for why I really like this approach. Now, first, it clearly indicates that the opposite is true. Second, it's one of the most commonly uttered words in the English language. So essentially by saying okay or some variation of it, you're indicating to your ex that you're not okay, but you also don't want to talk anymore about it. And you take the first step towards creating the leverage that's needed to eventually have that ex, hopefully, ask for you back. But how does that work? Well, think of it like this. It's an acceptance of the decision, saying, okay, but it's also, you're not giving your ex anything to add on to his preconceived perception of you. The preconceived perception of you is that you're going to be crying your eyes out, bawling your eyes out, eating the ice cream, having the tub of ice cream on the couch, watching Netflix, doing stuff like that. But simply being like, okay, it is very, very sort of like, it could be depending on the tone of the voice, it could be really different in how you take it. But more than anything, it creates mystery of what's going on in your brain. And that's what you want from them. And that's really where step 4 comes into play, because really saying okay alone, just saying like, okay, whatever, all right, fine. It's going to make him think or make her think, did this relationship mean anything to them? Did I have them pegged wrong? And that's where you want them. But the hard part of this response is what happens after it. And again, step 4 comes into play here, and that's the breakup revenge mentality. So last week I wrote this article called How to Get Revenge After a Breakup. And it's actually one of my favorite articles because it basically preaches the exact opposite of what you would expect. So most people fall into the trap of looking at breakups in a loser versus winner mentality. So I win the breakup, you lose the breakup. And that's the way they try to approach getting revenge on an ex. Here's the thing though. Well, it's great to fantasize about winners and losers after a breakup. It isn't really productive in the real world from what we've studied. The truth is, if you want revenge on your ex, the best advice I can give you is to follow Frank Sinatra's advice. And Frank Sinatra famously once said, the best revenge in life is massive success. And there is no sweeter revenge than your success. And the beauty is, it's about you. And that's what I mean by the whole breakup revenge mentality. You weren't supposed to try to emotionally manipulate an ex or be the bigger winner. Why not simply take time after your breakup to improve every aspect of your life to such a level that you create envy within your ex? That's how you can make them regret their decision to leave you. All right, so fun story here. When I was in my early 20s, I dated this girl for about 9 months. We broke up for a lot of reasons, but namely, being honest, it was my insecurities about her having a crush on another guy that she wanted to date but had rejected her, which in turn created like this serious trust issues and made me just this incredibly anxious, insecure person. I own that. It's who I was. It happened. So in the end, I end up being the one to end the relationship, and I'm like completely gutted. I mean, for months, I had the typical revenge mentality that I'm preaching you not to have. You know, I'm thinking I need to win this breakup. I'm not going to contact her until she contacts me, which is emotionally manipulative. I guess it's more of an intent type thing. After all, we do recommend the no contact rule, but our version of no contact is meant to be all about you as opposed to manipulating your ex. Yet, there would be nights where I struggled and I'd be on the verge of picking up the phone and wanting to beg for her back, which is kind of this really weird position to be in, especially when I was the one to end the relationship. I never did. And as time slowly ticked by, I started to focus on all the other areas of my life and ended up getting really enveloped in what I was doing outside of my dating life. Specifically, I got like super into tennis to the point where I became like this machine where I would go to school, I would work a little bit, I would go play tennis with my dad, and it created like this great bonding relationship between the two of us, something that bonded us together kind of forever, those 3 or 4 years that I was just like super into tennis. And it was kind of like, if you're looking at it from a Holy Trinity perspective, health, wealth, relationships, it was kind of like health and relationships combined into one. Also, this is during the time of my life where I ended up starting the website that would soon become exboyfriendrecovery.com. I had a pregnant friend who was also going through a breakup, but it didn't, I used basically ex-boyfriend recovery to house articles on research for how you would get an ex back. So there was kind of like this joint dual thing of me trying to study and help someone else out and get over a breakup. And I kind of used it as a form of therapy didn't know it would become and grow into what it is today, but sort of that is some of the stuff that I did during that breakup, and something super interesting happened. So a few months go by, I'm doing all this work, and my buddy at the time, he was hosting like a UFC viewing party, and we're sitting there, a bunch of people are there, and I notice he gets a call and leaves the room, and that's really rare for him to do. So an hour goes by, he comes back into the room, sits right next to me, and he says, "Chris, that was your ex. She was actually crying because her new boyfriend isn't treating her the same way you were in the relationship, and she's been seeing all the stuff you've been up to, and she regrets letting you go." And it felt really great. It felt like I had been exonerated in the fact that what I was doing with my time was the right thing to do. And it really made me a believer in the self-improvement side of things, and is actually how I came up with this very resonant Holy Trinity concept. Health, wealth, relationships, dividing your life up into this way was created in this very moment. And not to be too poetic, but it also kind of brings us full circle back to that secure attachment mentality. I mean, if you really think about it, what would a secure person do after a breakup? Well, they'd spend most of their time improving the aspects of their life that they have control over, and they wouldn't spend much of their time worried about the aspects they have no control over. So if you want to get revenge on your ex, here's my advice. Live well. And if your ex dumped you over text, accept the decision with a simple, okay, you create enough mystery, and then get to work on having that live well mentality.